WNYC Studios is supported by Harper Perennial, publisher of Black Girls Must Die Exhausted by Jane Allen, a novel about modern womanhood in which a young black woman must rely on those she loves most when her life is turned upside down. Available now.
Listener supported. WNYC Studios.
Here's a track from Ontario's own. This is new music from Shad.
Get in touch. Canada heat getting hotter than a Panama beach in a Canada goose. Weekend of Canada beat. Who's speaking Canada's truth? Who's standing for peace? I'm from the home of the slaves in the land that was tea. Lot of broken and lost souls on this planet of freaks. Supply and demand's the only commandment we preach. Each man is a brand, each night's famine and feast. So we quote ourselves, therefore I am in these streets. The people are sick, and nothing that a needle will fix. We need presents, we just get receipts for the gifts. Playing God, we just gotta cease and desist. When our own souls wish that we would cease to exist. We out of touch now.
That's Out of Touch, the opener from Shad's album Tao, out today. The album tackles and synthesizes a lot of issues that are on a lot of our minds, actually. Themes of spirituality, technology addiction, the gig economy, racism. Across 12 tracks, it draws from both C.S. Lewis and the Chinese philosophy of Taoism. Shadow's a Juno-winning rapper and was called one of the greatest Canadian rappers of all time by the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company, which also happens to be his former employer. Public radio listeners might recognize him from his stint as hosting the radio show Q. And he hosts Netflix Peabody Award-winning docuseries Hip Hop Evolution. Joining us now for a release day album listening party is Shad. Shad, we are so happy to have you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, this is great.
So we just played the song Out of Touch, which you've described as a thesis statement for the album. How does it set out what the album wants to achieve, what it's about?
Yeah. Well, that little phrase, out of touch, I think that describes a lot of what I'm on about with this album. The album is about connection. It's about disconnection in many senses from all sorts of different aspects of our lives, from our connection to work, our connection to the natural world, our connection to a sense of the sacredness of life, connection to each other. Out of touch kind of sums it up. And so the lyrics and the verses, they touch on all sorts of different things that we seem to be losing touch with. And then the rest of the album kind of unpacks each of those things one after the other, coming at each of those different aspects of our experience, the human experience, in different ways.
Why is it useful to have a thesis statement? Useful for you, and then possibly useful for your listener?
Well, in the case of this album, there is so much that I'm going into, and I like that. I liked having this big overarching theme that let me go in different directions in order to keep the album dynamic and interesting. But it's also nice to have a thread there for people to catch on to, have something that at the beginning of the album and at the end of the album, they can kind of feel a sense of the journey that they've been on. So yeah, that's why I thought it'd be nice to kind of lay it out in one song, and in a song like that has a very kind of positive, soulful, accessible kind of tone to it. I feel like it's a nice warm welcome into an album that goes to some darker places at points.
My guest is Shad. His name of his new album is Tao. It's out today. So there are 3 versions of the title track. There's Tao Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, and they each progresses in length. The first one's shortish, about 127. The second part is 257 and starts out with spoken word. And then the third part is almost 6 minutes long. Let's listen to Part 1, and then we can talk about it on the other side. This is Tao.
In other words, I'm from Mother Earth, but I'm otherworldly. Every other word is murder. If Mr. Wonder heard me, he'd say he's the new Miles. He's a younger bird, another Herbie. My mother's Mavis, pops is Pops, and my drummer's Purdy. That's lineage, my blood is dirty. That's word to my brother, like that brother Curry of the Jersey with number 30. You up in church when I utter verses of love and mercy. The ushers worship and start twerking with the other clergy. I'm battle tested, but was never that aggressive. Even as an adolescent, I would rather have a message. But man alive, the whole game's been sanitized. Damn, what we done to the young, it's like infanticide. Infantilize the dumbed down and amplify via algorithms as anything but randomized. I can't abide while these lies keep confusing things. They use euphemisms to lose the meaning of human beings. We know we're old souls, they call us new machines. What they call enhanced reality is a lucid dream. Literally,
What prompted that song?
Yeah, well, towards the end of that song there, I start to get into some themes of technology, and those 3 Tao tracks, part 1, 2, and 3, I feel like they carry that thread throughout the album. And then it starts out with just some classic hip hop, some New York boom bap style raps, kind of going in some different directions, being playful. That's what I grew up on. But what I grew up on was doing that, and also, you know, having fun with it, but also talking about some serious things. You know, hip hop has a space for both. It's one of the beautiful things about it. So that's what I wanted to do with that song. Just kind of start in this very comfortable, familiar place, but then start to go into this, introduce this thread of technology that ends up kind of carrying through the whole album.
So the idea was you would have Tao Part 1, a few songs, and you'd come back with Tao Part 2 and sort of reintroduce or reset, sort of like, and then part 3 is the way the album ends.
That's right, yeah, because even Tao Part 2 comes back to that boom bap kind of sound, this sort of familiar home bass type sound, but then that song is actually all about technology, new technology, and then Part 3, as you said, gets even longer, boom bap again, very classic home bass type of sound again, and starts out on that theme of technology and then goes into a whole bunch of stuff. It's a summary. It's a conclusion. Yeah.
So Tao obviously is from the Chinese philosophy of Taoism, but there's also a connection to C.S. Lewis, the Irish writer. I think most people know from Chronicles of Narnia. But it's actually the book, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the book The Abolition of Man that's important to you? How so?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So for me, the Tao, I picked Tao because it actually connects to, there's the spiritual philosophy, there's the abolition of man, and the Tao acronym is there, and there's also The Age of Surveillance Capitalism was an influential book for me when I was writing this album. And it was reading that book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, Shoshana Zuboff, that made me remember reading The Abolition of Man several years ago by C.S. Lewis, because I feel like both books at bottom are about science, technology, and its relationship to our humanity, and you know, how we think about ourselves as human beings, whether or not we believe human life is something special, something kind of sacred, inherently valuable, or if we just think it's raw material like everything else. So thinking about those two books written 80 years apart, and how at bottom they're kind of getting at the same thing, and how that thing that they're getting at relates to so much of what we're dealing with now, that just got me even more excited. So that's a very long, I apologize, story about how both of those books influenced the album. And actually The Abolition of Man discusses the Tao as well.
My guest is Shad. The name of his new album is Tao. You have a very smart song on here that parts are kind of funny, but I think has a really important message called Black Averageness, and sort of the play on Black excellence. Let's play the clip, and then we can talk about it on the other side.
Great.
Yeah. So you've heard of Black excellence.
Yes.
I love Black excellence. It's excellent. Unfortunately, this is not that.
Jared Dudley.
This is something different.
Very median.
Check it out. I'm one of a billion, paying the bills, man. Bills, fan, live in the building. My only drama's all my children. I'm chillin', not broke, not rich. Only chalet that we go into is Swiss. I relate to a Fred Van Vliet. I'm like, switch, sure I miss. Bitch, you basic. Well, it is what it is. Look, I say that I'm busy. Not that busy, though. I'm no Diddy. Look at the video. Wifey work for the city. Pensions litty. Y'all should retire. I do admire those who aspire, but I don't really. Not trying to be flyer. Canadian Tire. Life for us is already often catastrophic. So shout out all my Africans that learn the data process to fatten up the pockets, deal with racist bosses. Stanley at the office, turn it off and watch this.
I think it's such an important song. Black excellence is super important, and we all get excited about it. But the idea, like, you should just be able to go into a store or whatever in your jeans and your t-shirt. You don't have to wear Chanel to get good service. Black people should just be average and average, right? I mean, I'm so curious about when you sat down and wrote this song, because I think it's actually a really important song.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the idea occurred to me, like you were explaining, black excellence, obviously excellent. But black averageness, also important. It just occurred to me as a funny idea, but also, like you were saying, at bottom, there's something really important. There's something really important there. There's obviously all the negative stereotypes we encounter as black people, but then there's also, on the other hand, this stereotype, you could maybe call it, that we're magically endowed with these gifts or something, or we're only worthy of being celebrated if we're truly outstanding on a level that's like, otherworldly. And the reality is, most of us are neither of those things. Most of us are just normal. Like everybody else, we're just average, and there's something beautiful about kind of affirming that. That's a kind of song I really like to write, because it's fun and it's funny, but at the same time it has something to say, and hopefully is kind of liberating for anybody who's listening to it. I just wrote this. I wrote something for Clash magazine about black averageness, but also about averageness in general, and our relationship to it. That's sort of like it connotes inadequacy for some reason in our society. Everybody is sort of afraid of just being regular, and odds are that is who we are. And so, definitely there's something specific in that song, of course, about the black experience, but I think there's something kind of universal there, a message for our culture more broadly too.
Yeah, you hear parents often say to each other, especially in these hard times, like, you're doing fine, you're doing great. Like, your kid does not need to play violin by 3. You got him to school, he's alive. That's great. Like that idea that average has sort of become a pejorative, as opposed to, like, as you said, regular. Yeah. You're living your life, you're doing your best.
Well, one thing my mom used to reinforce for us is that average actually means you can do just about anything.
Cool.
That's what she would tell us. You're normal, you're average, but average means you can do just about anything. Especially, like, practically speaking, you can do just about anything that anybody else can do, because we're all more or less the same. It's not inadequacy at all. That's I don't know how we got that sense.
My guest is Shad. His new album is called Tao. Let's listen to a track called Slot Machines, which uses like casino games as a way to comment on social media. This is Slot Machines.
Slot machines, pop machines to pocket screens, casino scene, these slot machines, we drive through and walk between them. Give me some cash to put away. Casino scene, these slot machines, I'm trying to make me some today. flat shop, hoping that's the jackpot. Got matching hats, socks, and black watch, but that slot failed. Need to keep trying, so I say let me buy this delicious deep fried cheese covered meat pie. Need a sweet lime.
That is Slot Machines. I'm curious about when you write, because that's bouncy and exuberant, and also Black Averageness has a good beat. But when you have sort of also on the album some more serious lyrical content, but you have this sort of happy up-tempo music, how do you think about those two how they marry?
Yeah. To me, that's pop music. That's classic. That's Motown. It's just about every pop song I've ever loved. Is that marriage of things? So yeah, I think a lot about that because, well, the things I want to discuss in my music is they're complicated sometimes, and they're heavy sometimes, and I really care about entertaining people. I really care about being listenable and accessible, because that's just my instinct as a performer. I like to hold people's attention, and make them feel good at the end of it all. So yeah, that's something I think a lot about when I'm writing and when I'm putting songs together.
Before I let you go, I want you host the Peabody Award-winning Netflix series Hip Hop Evolution. As part of the series, you get to meet and interview all these hip hop legends, going back to DJ Kool Herc. Was there someone you got to speak to that you really admired, that you really had to keep it together to talk to them?
Yeah, so many, but the one that stands out, the one that surprised me was Q-Tip.
Yeah.
From A Tribe Called Quest. He was one of the later interviews, I think, that we did. So, I was fairly comfortable, fairly in the groove. I always got nervous before the interviews, but, the usual kind of nerves that go away as soon as you enter into conversation. But with him, I was struck by how much I owed him. When I got in his presence, I wasn't totally prepared for that feeling of like, this guy doesn't know it, but I kind of owe a lot of my life to this guy. A lot of the things I've been able to experience came from a branch of the tree that he started. So that one stands out for me. And the director told me too after the interview, like, dude, you were kind of shook in that one. And yeah, I was for sure.
Will we get a season 5 soon?
There's no plans yet for season 5. We would all love to pick it up at some point. I don't think it makes sense right now because the last season ends around the mid-2000s, and to reflect on what's happened since then, I think we would need some more distance, but I would love to pick it up at a certain point. There's so many interesting things have happened since then, especially with the internet and how all the different platforms change the sound. Like the show really maps things in terms of geography, but I think at a certain point you got to hop to the geography of the internet to see how hip hop has changed and why.
My guest has been Shad. His new album is out today. It's called Tao. Thank you so much for spending time with us on album release day. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This was great.
I mean, good scientists, they have the minds of children.
One man's pursuit.
He set up a chemistry lab when he was 12.
Changed the very air we breathe.
Holy smokes.
This hideous crime we were committing.
Flaming rock.
It's everywhere.
Turns into like thorium, then turns into radon, and turns into bismuth.
It's accidental.
I see it as the majesty of God's hand.
From Radiolab, Heavy Metal. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.